our hot seat coaches tiers for the Big Ten. I'll be honest, I had some areas where I could have gone back and forth with a few guys, but I will go
Me
ahead if
too.
anybody's listening on podcasts that I will read them off, and then you and I can kind of discuss maybe some of the differences, and then maybe some of the guys that we thought could have been here, could have been there, and then obviously if there's any reactions from the chat, we will get to that as well. My please never leave tier is Brett Bielema, Kirk Cinetti, Dan Lanning. My keep up the good work tier is Greg Schiano, Sharon Moore, PJ Fleck, and Ryan Day. Not happy but not mad for me is Jonathan Smith, Jed Fish, Barry Odom, David Braun, Matt Rule, James Franklin, and Kirk Ferentz. The it's getting bad tier is Lincoln Riley and DeShaun Foster. And then my in trouble tier is Mike Loxley and Luke Fickell. Zach, your list, similar to mine. The please never leave tier is Brett Bielema, Kirk Cinetti. They keep up the good work is Dan Lanning, Greg Schiano, Sharon Moore, PJ Fleck, and Ryan Day. The not happy but not mad tier is DeShaun Foster, Jonathan Smith, Jed Fish, Barry Odom, David Braun, Matt Rule, James Franklin, Kirk Ferentz, and then your it's getting bad tier is Lincoln Riley and Luke Fickell, and then your in trouble tier is just one Mike Loxley. Zach, you and I differ on Dan Lanning. I have him one above. I have him in the please never leave tier. You have him down in the keep up the good work tier. I have DeShaun Foster down in the it's getting bad tier, and you have Luke Fickell in the it's getting bad tier. So, what are some differences here you want to point out and talk about?
I mean, I think the differences are probably a little. I mean, I think they're probably just feel right. Like I have Luke Fickell in the it's getting bad because it's getting bad, but like Mike Loxley should be fired as of like 3 years ago. Um, Luke Fickell, I think, gets another year. So I'm like, there should just be a Mike Loxley tier, in my opinion. And Luke Fickell isn't there yet in my mind. But I would agree that you could argue that he, you know, maybe should have gotten fired this year. So I don't
I
think
think
it's
I
that
think you got to
bad.
give them. I think you got to give them one chance to redo their coordinator hire, which
Yeah,
I think
no,
I
I,
think
I
is what
agree
was.
with that.
Yeah, I think that's what Wisconsin is doing right now. Wisconsin is saying, Luke, you did not get the offensive coordinator hire right with Phil Longo. We will give you one more year, or at least a year and a half, possibly 2 years,
Yeah.
to hire another coordinator, see how it goes. But I think honestly, if Luke Fickell goes 5-7 again, possibly even 6-6, which is actually quite possible with how hard that schedule is, I don't think Luke Fickell was the coach the year after that.
Yeah. I Yeah, so I mean, I think it is getting bad. I don't know if he's like in trouble, but I agree with you. I think it's teetering. Um Deshaun Foster, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I It wasn't a great year out in LA. They're in LA if you didn't know. Um
I heard
but
that someplace.
yeah, but I thought Deshaun Foster had a nice run close to the end of the season, and so I'm like, it's certainly people are certainly not happy, but I'm like, I don't know if they're like they're super like this is like doomsday scenario because of what the expectations were. Um, but like I can understand why you would put them in it's getting bad. And then I think probably the biggest one, I feel like with Dan Lanning and Ryan Day, I think Dan Lanning was in the please never leave category up until the Rose Bowl, and then they got blitzed. And I'm like, yeah, like I think there was a lot of hope that Oregon would get the 0 out of the national title column this year, and instead they lost by 20, and it should have been worse. And so I think it's very much like in the middle for me. Like, please never leave and keep up the good work. But I do think that's something that will be in the craw of Oregon fans like for a while. And then for Ryan Day, if he wins a national championship, it is please never leave.
So I'll start with DeShaun Foster. I have felt like ever since he was hired, that DeShaun Foster might have a little bit of a shorter leash than maybe a normal first year head coach hire, just because I think UCLA's options were very thin when it came time to hire,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. And I think they saw a guy that was an alumni who had good relations and somebody that people trusted to, stabilize the program for a little bit. He doesn't have any head coaching experience. He doesn't have that much even coaching experience. So for him to take the job as a first-year head coach, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I have a feeling like that UCLA, administration is kind of looking at the situation like, okay, we're going to give DeShaun a year or two, but if things don't go well, we're not going to feel bad to, cut bait or, say, hey, maybe you go back to the running back position, coach again, and we hire somebody else. So for me, like, that's kind of where I'm at with it. We're like, it's getting bad. You can't have another season like this again where you only win, what was it, 2 Big Ten games or 3? Was it 2 or 3?
I thought it was 3, wasn't it?
Okay. Yeah. Where you only win 3 Big Ten games. We're getting into the conference. We need to do better than this. But that's also implying that UCLA has high expectations for their football program. They may not. Still learning about UCLA. So, but yeah. And then Dan Lanning for me, I feel like by the time we get to next season, I feel like those Oregon fans are going to be fully embracing Dan Lanning once again. He's going to get back on their side. He's going to have the arrogance. He's going to have, which he should have. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think he's going to have a lot of that stuff. He's going to have a lot of confidence from the fan base once they get into the new year again. And I think people are going to be feeling really good about him. I think some people think the Oregon fan base is similar to the Ohio State fan base. I don't think it's like that. I think Dan Lanning bought himself a lot of trust currency with the fan base when he essentially came out and said he was not interested in the Alabama job because he wants to build something special at Oregon. Yeah. You think of the Oregon coaches that they have had that's been successful. They've all left, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mario Cristobal goes to Miami. Chip Kelly goes to the NFL. Many coaches have looked at this as just a stepping stone school. And I think Dan Lanning is really the first one that's come in that has been openly vocal about it, and they trust that to him this isn't a stepping stone school. This is a school where he wants to invest and win a national championship at because he believes in the program and he thinks he can make that happen. And I think that buys a lot of trust and, social currency within the fan base.
Yeah. Can I go back to DeShaun Foster real quick?
Sure.
Because I agree with you that I do think you're right that there's probably a shorter leash there. UCLA had the number 1 hardest schedule in the country this year. They played 3 playoff teams, and they defeated 3 Big Ten teams who all went to bowl games. And I look at their schedule next year. They start with Utah at UNLV and New Mexico.
Why are they going at UNLV? That drives me crazy.
It's dumb. But
I understood Hawaii to a certain extent. You have Hawaiian players on your team. They want to go back home. I get that. I don't get going to UNLV. Maybe there's some kind of special thing there, and a UCLA fan can tell me in the comments that I'm unaware of. I apologize, but I don't want to go. I don't want Big Ten teams traveling to Group of 5 programs. To me, that you just can't do it.
Yep. I don't disagree. But then they played at Northwestern. They played Penn State at home, but then they get Michigan State, Maryland. And they have other hard teams, but I think there's a real possibility that UCLA goes to a bowl game next year. And if they do, I think that actually affords a bit more leash as DeShaun Foster is proving himself. So certainly. I think there is. I think you're right that there is a short leash because of where DeShaun Foster's coming in and his experience level. But I will say that he also has a real opportunity to prove himself because they're not going to have the brutal schedule that they had last year.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Let's look at Ryan Day for a second. You brought him up as somebody that you would move up if he wins the national championship. I don't know. Call me crazy, but I'm still keeping him at keep up the good work. For me, you got to beat your rival at some point. I don't think he is going to have full fan base, please never leave buy-in until he beats Michigan. I think people are going to be happy with him. Obviously, you win the national championship when people are going to say, don't go anywhere. We want you here. But I think there's also going to be a hint of skepticism that's like, boy, we're glad we have Ryan Day. If he can just fix that Michigan issue. We're really glad we have him, but if he can just fix that one issue. Like, it's going to kind of linger around. And, I mean, Ryan Day could be undefeated next year, going to the Michigan game and lose at Michigan. I don't think it's going to be as big as it was this year, but if that happens, you can have people saying he should be fired.
Yeah. I have a question. How many years does a national championship afford Ryan Day?
I think if you beat Michigan in those years, I think it gives you 5 years at minimum.
Well, but if he doesn't beat Michigan.
If he doesn't beat Michigan any of those times, I mean, they're not going to fire him just for not beating Michigan if he won a national championship. But it's going to get the fan base really mad. So I think it's going to be one of those situations where the fan base is very upset. The fan base wants to move on, but the administration won't do it. Anything else on Ryan Day?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
Let's talk about James Franklin. James Franklin in the not happy but not mad tier. I am regretting that a little bit. I almost am thinking I should have put him up in the keep up the good work tier, but at the same time, I know the big games thing. It'd be one thing if it was like 1-8, in big games. It's not. It's a much worse record.
Yep.
Than that. And I know Penn State fans hate when we bring it up, and I'm not necessarily loving to bring it up either, but the way I look at it is like, I don't know if Penn State fans can say James Franklin is consistently giving them good work when he can't win those big games. Every time they go into a big game, afterwards it feels like they have to defend their coach the entire time.
Yep.
And to a certain point, that gets exhausting for Penn State fans. And so the way I look at it is like, I think people are happy that James Franklin is keeping the program relevant, that he's keeping the program, at a top 10 level, that kind of stuff. But, there is that greater desire for more. And, James Franklin did take him to the semifinals, but he also didn't, beat a huge team on the way. Not trying to take anything away from the SMU and Boise State wins. I think those are still playoff wins. You need to have those accounted for. But it wasn't like he took down a Georgia like Notre Dame did. It's not like he took down a Tennessee like Ohio State did. I think that would have bought him a lot of social currency if he was able to do something like that. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think so I work with a lot of Penn State fans, and I think they don't know what to do with James Franklin, because on one hand they're like, we get 10 wins almost every year. And they're in the playoff discussion every year for the most part. The only time they're not is when their quarterback's gotten hurt, right? When Clifford got hurt that one year, then everything went off the rails. But the problem is, I'd forgotten this. His biggest win was Ohio State in 2016. That's 8 years ago. And they keep saying to me as a Buckeye fan, we haven't beat you guys we beat you once 8 years ago. And while I don't think Penn State has beaten Ohio State often over the past 25 years, when Joe Pa was there, like he had a couple wins in a few years, like 2005, 2008, and then 2011, like he's won every 3 years in that span. And then in the 90s, he got a couple wins. Like it was never like 1 and 10. And granted, I think Ohio State has had a generational run over the past 23 years, ever since Tress took over. But I think the fan base is getting tired of coming up just short. And I think that a lot of the losses have been very similar to what transpired last week against Notre Dame. And I think they're like, hey, we've seen this. It's very similar, I think, to how Ohio State fans felt before this playoff run. It's like, we've seen this movie before. We know how it's going to end. I mean, if I had Penn State fans telling me they were dreading winning and beating Notre Dame, because there's like, how bad will it be if we lose to Ohio State in the national championship game? And it's like, man, that's a terrible place to be as a fan.
Yeah, it is.
So I don't regret putting him there because I think I think Penn State's committed to him, and they're like, if you're going to win 10 games every year, that's great. But I think there is a point, and I think it's coming sooner rather than later, where fan sentiment is going to be like, hey guys, we don't like this. Please listen to us.
I think back to that video that we made where it was like, should James Franklin be fired? And I think you and I defended James Franklin a good amount in that video. Yeah. I think we pointed out a lot of the areas that he's doing well, and I even said, hey, look, Ryan Day's turned the narrative around this year. Who says James Franklin can't in the next few years? Maybe he doesn't turn around and win a national championship, but maybe he gets himself to the playoffs and beats Tennessee, beats Texas, beats a big team like that. But like, I don't know if Penn State fans are going to be patient enough for that to happen, and I get that. But like I said, I looked at the comments of that video, and it was filled with Penn State fans saying, why are you guys hating on James Franklin? We love James Franklin. James Franklin has, been a spectacular coach. He brought us back from, the disasters of after Joe Pa and everything like that. And it's like, I don't know, like I didn't anticipate some Penn State fans to feel, so confident in James Franklin that they would go on and be just upset that I made a video saying, should James Franklin be fired? Because I want to point it out to him. Look, I defended him in the video. I don't know what you're mad at me about. They're like, it's the fact that you would even make a video about it. It's like, all right, well, it's getting talked about, so I'm going to make a video on it.
That's fair.
But, yeah, so. All right, that's a good amount of James Franklin talk. The Ohio State Buckeyes says if Ryan Day loses to Michigan, then wins the title, that will make it. Okay, yeah, that will. Is he going to do it every year? How many Ohio State fans would take a loss to Michigan every year, but a national title?
But if you think about it, it's kind of the Kirby Smart model right now.
Lose to Alabama and then make the national championship. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, he did beat Alabama in the national championship. That was his only win over him. So I guess that's kind of vindication.
Yeah.
But
yeah. That's what needs to happen next year. Ohio State needs to play Michigan in the national. No, you know what? They need to play Michigan at the end of the season, beat them, then play them in the Big Ten championship game, beat them, and then play them in the Natty and beat them and be like, it's over. We're done. Michigan curse over.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Jesus Rivera says, is Day going to the NFL if he wins the Natty, or is there an obsession with not beating Michigan? I mean, there's definitely an obsession with not beating Michigan. I don't know how strong Ryan Day, his obsession is with that, but something that I'm learning through this, new format of the college football playoffs is I don't know how many coaches that win the national championship are going to go after the NFL, because a lot of these NFL teams are filling their head coaching vacancies before, or like doing a lot of their interviews before the national championship game happens. So, obviously there's still going to be some that are open, but our team's going to find a candidate before that they just fall in love with so much? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Ryan Day will take some interviews if he gets a lot of interest, but like you think about the Patriots, they hired Mike Vrabel.
Mm-hmm.
That was one many thought, with Ryan Day being from New Hampshire, he would be interested in. Well, not anymore, because they hired Mike Vrabel, who a lot of Ohio State fans wanted to be the head coach if Ryan Day left. But yeah. And then Dave is pointing out here. Dave, this is exactly what I thought. He said he's saying you made a video. There's a lot of them made about it, and if you were being positive, you don't know why they wouldn't like it. And I'm with you, Dave. That's what I thought. Like when I made the video, I'm like, okay, Penn State fans I think will like this, at least the ones that like James Franklin, and then I'll get some pushback from the ones that don't like James Franklin. Nope, I got pushback from the ones that did like James Franklin.
You think they should fire him? No, we didn't. We didn't say that. We didn't say that.
Well, you made a video on it.
Yeah,
well,
just to the right.
Listen to what we said.
No. Title. You guys are stupid. You didn't listen to it, did you? No. Okay, then why are we being called stupid?
Listen to the video and then come back to me.
Yeah. Can I just the Ryan Day thing?
Do you have anything more you want to point out?
I was going to say I don't think Ryan Day will go off to the NFL. I think his family, like and he said this multiple times, he loves that his family is growing up in Columbus. And so I think he wants to be there. I just think a lot of angry fans, which, me included, were like, you got to beat Michigan. What the heck? And now he's gone on this generation. Like, by the way, whoever wins the national championship on Monday, whether it's Notre Dame or Ohio State, it is the greatest accomplishment by a national championship ever.
This is the hardest path any team has ever had to go through to win a national championship.
And I know people will say, well, Ohio State has 2 losses. Notre Dame lost to NIU. I don't care.
Is that how they sound?
Like, I don't care. Like, Ohio State will have beat 5 AP top 5 teams in a year, which will be a record. Notre Dame, I believe, will be up to 4, which ties a record.
What was Ryan Day's top 5 record?
It's like
going into the season.
It's like 1-6, I think, or something like that.
So he's still not 500.
He might be 5.
Well, but he has a loss to Oregon in the regular season.
Yeah,
so
hold on.
Let me 1-7. He wins 5. That would make him 6-7. That would mean he went through the hardest gauntlet of a season ever to win the national championship, and he is still below 500 in top 5.
He was 4-6 before the playoff. He is now 7-6.
Oh,
or no, he's 6-6. Sorry, he's 6 because Tennessee was not a top 5 team.
Is Notre Dame a top 5 team?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, because they're not seeded as a top 5, but because of the seeding, they were what, 4? I forget.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Anything else on the head coaching hot seat tiers that you want to get into before we? They were 5th. I apologize. They are number 5, so they are top 5. Yep. Anything else in the head coach hot seat tiers you want to get to before we move on, Zach?
No, I'm good.
All right, I'm good as well. So we will